He was a ruthless Mafia boss, feared by all, loved by none, until a midnight call shattered 6 years of silence. A woman from his past, whispering 4 words that would change everything. Our son is dying. But when he reached the hospital, it didn't exist anymore. What he found next rewrote the meaning of power, blood, and love. The clock struck 12, sharp and merciless, echoing through the marble stillness of Danny Morrison's office. The entire city outside lay asleep under a cold silver moon, but inside that high-rise fortress, the air carried the tension of unfinished sins. Every tick of the clock bounced off the glass walls like a whisper of ghosts. The ones he created and the ones he buried. No one dared to call Danny Morrison after dark. No one. Those who did never did it twice. His empire thrived on that rule, silence after midnight. It was the hour when the ruthless became untouchable. And yet, that night, the phone on his desk broke the sacred law. A shrill, trembling ringtone sliced through the quiet, making his jaw tighten. He stared at the screen, an unknown number. His instincts screamed to ignore it, but something deep and unseen made his fingers hover over the answer key. A feeling he hadn't known in years, unease. He pressed, accept. "Who is this?" he demanded, his voice cold, sharp enough to cut through the air. But what came next wasn't a name. It was a ghost. "Danny, it's me." He froze. That voice, that soft tremor, it didn't belong to the streets or to his men or to his enemies. It belonged to her, Mia, the woman he had buried deep inside the graves of memory 6 years ago. The woman he had once loved so fiercely that it scared him. The woman who had vanished one night without a word, leaving behind only her scent, her betrayal, and the hollow ache he built his empire on. For 6 years, her name had been a forbidden word in his world, but tonight that word came alive again. Fragile, desperate, trembling. He leaned back slowly, his chest tightening. "Why are you calling me?" he managed, though his voice cracked beneath the weight of disbelief. His hand gripped the armrest, knuckles white. 1,000 emotions stormed through him. Anger, confusion, longing. He hated that her voice still had power over him. He wanted to scream, to demand why she left, where she went, how she dared to return. But then came the words that broke through his rage, slicing through every defense he had ever built. "Our son. He's in ICU, and only you can save him." For a second, he couldn't breathe. The world blurred. The words didn't make sense. "Our son?" His pulse thundered in his ears. "What did you just say?" he whispered, his tone somewhere between shock and fury. His mind raced. Mia had disappeared 6 years ago. How could there be a child? Their child? His heart, the one he thought long dead, slammed against his ribs as if trying to escape. "Mia," he said again, voice trembling now. "What the hell are you talking about?" But her voice cracked, dissolving into tears. "Danny, please. I don't have time to explain. He's dying. You're the only one who can save him. Please." And then the line went dead. Static filled the silence. Danny stood there, frozen, staring at the lifeless phone in his hand. The world that once bowed to his command suddenly felt unsteady beneath his feet. His breath came in short bursts. He replayed her words again and again. "Our son, ICU. Only you can save him." It didn't feel real. It felt like a cruel trick from fate. Or worse, a trap. But there was something in her voice he couldn't ignore. Desperation. Pain. The kind of fear no one could fake. Against every rule he ever lived by, he grabbed his coat, his gun, and stormed out into the night. The city's neon lights blurred as he sped down the empty highway, rain beginning to fall like a warning. His grip on the steering wheel tightened with every flash of lightning. Thoughts crashed into each other. If Mia had truly had his child, that boy, that stranger when I would be 6 years old now, 6 years of birthdays missed, laughter unheard, life unlived. Each mile he drove ripped open another scar he thought had healed. He wanted to hate her. God, he wanted to. But beneath the fury there was something else. Fear. Not for himself, not for the empire he built, but for the small, unseen life hanging between her words. He pressed harder on the accelerator, his car slicing through the storm. If this is a setup, he muttered under his breath, someone's going to pay. But the part of him that once slept beside her, that once dreamed of a quiet life beyond blood and crime, whispered back, what if it's not? That question haunted him more than any threat could. His men tried to reach him, calling, but he ignored every call. Tonight, he wasn't the Mafia boss. Tonight, he was just a man chasing the ghost of a love he once lost. And maybe a child he never knew he had. The GPS flickered as he turned into an old part of the city, the one he hadn't set foot in for years. The address Mia had given him replayed in his mind. St. Helena Hospital. He remembered it vaguely, a private clinic that used to treat high-risk cases under secrecy. It made sense she'd go there if she was hiding. But as he pulled up, his headlights fell on something that made his stomach drop. The building stood in ruins. Burned walls, collapsed roof. The sign, half hanging, still read St. Helena in broken letters. Weeds grew through cracked pavement, and the air reeked of ash and rain. He stepped out, the storm soaking him instantly, eyes wide in disbelief. He walked toward the blackened gates, boots crunching over glass. His heart pounded, every instinct screaming that something was wrong. He called her name into the dark. Mia! But only the echo of his own voice answered. The entire structure looked like it had been abandoned for years. No lights, no voices, no life. He stared at the hollow building, his mind spinning. The call had come minutes ago. The desperation, the urgency, the fear. But this place was dead. He ran a hand through his wet hair, pulling out his phone, checking the number again. Untraceable. He dialed back. It rang once, then silence. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the ruined hospital. The entrance door swung loosely on its hinges, creaking in the wind like a whisper. He stepped inside, ignoring the burn marks that scarred the walls. The air was thick with dust and old smoke. The faint sound of dripping water echoed somewhere deep within. He moved slowly. Flashlight from his phone cutting through the darkness. Hallways lined with broken stretchers, scattered files and forgotten machines stretched before him. Every step he took made the silence heavier. Then, a sound. A faint, almost imperceptible sound. A phone ringing somewhere in the distance. Not his, a different one. Old, cracked, echoing. He followed it, pulse racing. The ringing stopped as suddenly as it began. He reached an old ICU ward, the sign barely hanging from a rusted nail. Inside, only shadows and broken beds. But on the floor near one of them, his heart stopped, lay a single child's hospital bracelet. The name tag was half burnt, but one word remained clear. Morrison. The air left his lungs. He picked it up slowly, hands trembling. His reflection stared back at him in a shattered mirror on the wall. A man who had spent years mastering power but never love. His throat tightened as thunder cracked outside, lightning bathing the ruins in white light for a brief moment. And in that moment, Danny realized this wasn't just a call for help. It was a message, a warning, or maybe a test. He turned toward the exit, eyes cold now, voice low as he whispered to himself, "You wanted me here for a reason, Mia. I'll find out why." The storm roared louder, drowning out everything but the beating of his heart. As he stepped back into the rain, the hospital door slammed shut behind him, on its own, and in that instant, he knew. This night was only the beginning. The call came from a hospital that didn't exist anymore, yet someone, or something, had wanted him to find it. The storm showed no mercy. Rain crashed against the cracked walls of the abandoned building as Danny stood outside, breath shallow, every sense alert. The phone call haunted his mind, the burned hospital before him mocking his confusion. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the hollow windows like the empty eyes of a corpse. He should have turned back. Every instinct he'd ever trusted screamed trap, but the bracelet in his pocket, the one with Morrison burned into it, anchored him to this ghost of a place. He had to know. He had to find her, or whatever was left of her. He pushed open the rusted doors, their hinges groaning in protest, the sound echoing down the ruined corridor like a cry from the dead. His gun was drawn, safety off, eyes scanning every shadow. The air was thick with dampness and decay, the faint scent of smoke still clinging to the walls, a scent that carried memory, pain, and something unspoken. His footsteps echoed, cautious, sharp, and deliberate. He passed broken equipment, torn hospital sheets, and empty beds that looked like tombs. Somewhere deep within, water dripped in a slow, haunting rhythm. Drip, drip, drip. It was the only sound in the world, until another one broke it. "Danny?" He froze mid-step, the words slicing through the silence like a whisper from another life. The gun in his hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but disbelief. He turned toward the sound, his heartbeat thunderous in his chest. For a second, lightning flashed through the shattered windows, and in that pale burst of light, he saw her. Mia, standing at the far end of the corridor, drenched, pale, her arms cradling something. Someone. Mia, his voice cracked on her name. He moved closer, cautious, as though she might vanish like a mirage. Her eyes, wide and filled with tears, met his. Eyes that once made him forget who he was, eyes that still held every memory of the love they'd destroyed. She stumbled forward, clutching a little boy against her chest. "He can't breathe," she cried out, her voice breaking. "Danny, please, he can't breathe." In an instant, the gun slipped from his hand and clattered to the floor. He rushed to her, his world narrowing to the small, limp body in her arms. The boy's lips were pale, his tiny chest barely rising. Danny knelt, his trembling fingers brushing the child's damp hair aside. The boy's face, the dark hair, the defiant brows, the shape of his jaw. It was like looking into a mirror of his own past. His breath hitched. He looks like... His words faltered. "He is you," Mia whispered, sobbing. "He's your son." For a heartbeat, the world stopped moving. Time folded in on itself. Danny felt a weight crush his chest. Guilt, shock, awe, everything colliding at once. "Why didn't you tell me?" he whispered, voice raw, shaking. "Why would you keep this from me?" She shook her head, clutching the boy tighter. "Because if you knew, he'd be dead by now." Her words cut through him like glass. His jaw tightened. "What are you talking about? Who?" But before she could answer, the sound of tires screeched outside. The faint rumble of engines grew louder. Too many of them. His instincts flared like fire. He turned toward the doorway, muscles tense. Headlights flashed through the rain, reflecting off the shattered windows. Black SUVs. 3, maybe 4. His heart pounded. "Get down," he hissed, grabbing Mia's hand and pulling her behind a fallen stretcher. Bullets shattered the silence before she could even scream. The roar of gunfire tore through the ruins, lighting up the hallways like flashes of hellfire. Danny shielded her and the boy with his body, glass raining down from above. "Stay low," he shouted. She clung to him, the boy between them, trembling. The sound of men shouting orders outside carried through the storm. Cold, disciplined voices, not street thugs, professionals. Someone had planned this. Someone knew he'd come here. A bullet ricocheted off the wall inches from his face. He ducked, pulling her closer, his hand instinctively reaching for his gun. He peeked through the broken wall. Black uniforms, tactical gear, no gang insignia. This wasn't random. It was a strike. "How did they find us?" he snarled. "I didn't tell anyone," Mia cried. "I swear, Danny, I didn't." Her words were drowned by another explosion of bullets. He grabbed the boy, pressing him close to his chest. "Cover your ears," he whispered, then turned to Mia. "Stay right behind me." His tone was sharp. The old Danny, the Mafia boss, resurfacing through the chaos. He moved fast, firing 2 rounds through the broken window, taking down the nearest gunman. Shouts erupted outside. They knew now who was inside. "He's here! It's Morrison! Take him alive!" Mia's breath came in gasps as they ducked between burned walls, the rain pouring through holes in the roof, mixing with dust and blood. Danny pushed ahead, guiding her through a narrow corridor, his mind racing. He didn't know who sent them, but he knew one thing. They weren't here for him. They were here for the boy. He could see it in the way they hesitated, their aim shifting away from the child every time they fired. That detail chilled him more than the bullets themselves. "Danny, please," Mia gasped. "He can't take this. He's too weak." The boy coughed, his little body trembling against her shoulder. Danny ripped off his jacket and wrapped it around the child. "Hold on, kid," he muttered. "Just hold on." He glanced at Mia. "There's a back exit through the east wing. I remember this place." She nodded, tears streaking down her face, following him through the dim hallway. They reached a stairwell, its metal steps slick with rain and ash. He went first, clearing corners with steady precision. Another burst of gunfire rattled the walls, sparks flying from the stair rail. He shielded Mia with his body, her breath hot against his neck as they descended. When they reached the bottom floor, Danny shoved open a side door that led into a half-collapsed courtyard. The storm raged harder now, wind howling through broken glass. They ran. Through puddles, through mud, through memories, the boy's shallow breaths echoed in his ears, each one pulling him closer to panic. But he couldn't stop. Not yet. They reached the outer fence, half broken, metal twisted and sharp. He pushed the boy into Mia's arms. "Climb," he ordered. "Now!" She hesitated. "What about you?" He looked back, headlights cutting through the rain. "I'll cover you. Go." She climbed, struggling with one hand as she held the boy. Danny fired again, bullets hissing through the storm. One SUV skidded to a stop, doors flying open. More men poured out. The leader shouted, "Don't shoot! That's the boss's son!" The command froze everything for a moment. Even the rain seemed to pause. Danny's eyes widened. The boss's son? Whose boss? His mind raced. If they weren't his men, then whose? Mia gasped, nearly losing her grip. Danny caught her arm, pulling her the rest of the way over the fence. They landed hard on the other side, mud splashing around them. "Run!" he barked. They sprinted through the overgrown field, headlights flashing behind them, shouts chasing through the rain. Every sound, every shadow felt like it carried another threat. But through it all, Danny's mind kept replaying that one line. "Don't shoot. That's the boss's son." He turned his head once, catching sight of a man standing on the other side of the fence. Tall, suited, unflinching in the downpour. The man didn't raise his weapon. He just watched them run, a faint smile playing on his lips. Lightning flashed, and the stranger vanished into the dark. Danny's heart pounded. None of it made sense. The fake hospital call, the ambush, the men who knew about his son. But as he looked at the little boy in Mia's arms, coughing weakly but still breathing, he made one silent promise to himself. Whoever orchestrated this, whoever dared to use his family as bait, would soon learn what it meant to awaken the monster they thought they could control. Behind them, the stranger's voice carried faintly through the storm, calm, deliberate, and chilling. "Tell Morrison the past isn't done with him yet." The rain hadn't stopped. It hammered the motel roof in relentless rhythm, a drumbeat of chaos echoing through the silence that followed their escape. Danny slammed the door shut behind them, the metallic click of the lock echoing like a promise. The room smelled of damp wood and old cigarettes. A single flickering bulb cast restless shadows across the cracked walls. Mia sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the boy, her fingers trembling as she brushed wet hair from his forehead. Danny paced the floor like a caged animal, water dripping from his coat, eyes burning with questions he didn't know how to ask. His heart still raced from the chase, but what consumed him now wasn't fear. It was fury. Fury at her silence. Fury at the ghosts that refused to die. He stopped, turned toward her, and his voice came out low, dangerous. "Talk." The word cut through the air like the strike of a whip. "Start with why my son was dying alone in a burned-down hospital." His tone carried the weight of 6 years of buried rage. Mia flinched, clutching the boy tighter. "I didn't have a choice," she whispered. "You think I wanted any of this?" Her voice cracked, fragile but defiant. Danny stepped closer, shadows stretching behind him like dark wings. "You disappeared, Mia. 6 years. You let me believe you were dead. And now you show up with a son I never knew I had. My son. And tell me someone's trying to kill him?" His words were sharp, but beneath the anger, his voice trembled with something rawer. Fear. She looked up, eyes shimmering with guilt. "Danny, listen to me. You left because you thought I betrayed you, but it wasn't me." Her breath caught as tears filled her lashes. "It was your brother, Danny. Victor made me disappear." The name hit him like a bullet. Danny's blood went cold. Victor's dead. His voice was flat, final, a statement carved in stone. But Mia shook her head slowly, her tears falling like rain. "No," she whispered. "He's alive." Danny stared at her, trying to process the impossible. The room seemed to shrink around him. "That's not possible. I saw the explosion. I buried his men. His words faltered, choking on disbelief. Mia's voice trembled. "He survived, Danny, and he's been hunting us ever since. He wants what's in your bloodline." The phrase made him still. "Your bloodline?" His pulse quickened. He took a slow step forward. "What does that mean, Mia? What does he want?" She hesitated, looking away. "Your son carries something Victor needs, something tied to you. I don't know what it is, but he's obsessed. He called it the legacy." Danny clenched his fists, his mind spinning. Betrayal, confusion, memories of Victor, his laughter, his loyalty, his sudden death. They flashed before him like broken film reels. "You're telling me my brother faked his death, destroyed our family, and used you to get to me?" he growled. Mia nodded, sobbing now. "He wanted control. You were too powerful, too loved. He couldn't kill you, so he took away everything that made you human." Danny's throat tightened. 6 years, Mia. 6 goddamn years, and you let me mourn you." His words came out as a whisper laced with pain. "Do you know what that did to me?" She looked up, eyes wide, her voice breaking. "I had to. If you knew I was alive, he'd have found me. And if he found me, he'd have killed you too." The room fell silent except for the storm outside. Danny turned away, his reflection staring back at him in the cracked mirror. A man torn between vengeance and love. He pressed his palms against the dresser, his breath ragged. "Victor was my brother," he murmured, almost to himself. "My blood." Mia's voice softened, filled with sorrow. "And he's using that blood to destroy everything you ever cared about." He turned back toward her, his expression shifting from anger to something broken. He knelt before her, reaching out slowly. "You should have trusted me," he said quietly. "You should have told me." She met his gaze, tears falling freely now. "I couldn't," she whispered, "because the moment I see you again, I forget how to protect myself." For a long moment, they just stared at each other. The tension between them was thick, electric. Love and pain twisted into one unbearable truth. Danny lifted a trembling hand, brushing a strand of wet hair from her cheek. His touch was gentle, almost reverent. She closed her eyes, leaning into it despite herself. "Don't look at me like that," she whispered, voice trembling. "You're not allowed to love me anymore." His reply came out rough, cracked, full of years of longing. Too late. The words hung between them, fragile and dangerous. Lightning flashed through the grimy window, bathing them in pale light. For a fleeting second, it felt as if time itself had paused, as if they were back where it all began, before betrayal, before bloodshed. But the illusion shattered the moment their sun stirred. Gasping in pain, Mia's eyes widened. "Danny!" The boy convulsed in her arms, a faint cry escaping his lips. Danny rushed forward, heart pounding. "What's happening?" he shouted. Then he saw it. A small dart lodged in the boy's arm, the metal tip glowing faint blue beneath the skin. His breath caught. He recognized that glow. "No," he whispered, panic gripping his chest. "No, not that." He pulled the dart free with shaking hands, staring at the faint insignia etched near the base, a V carved through a serpent's eye. His stomach twisted. "It's Victor's mark." Mia gasped, horror flashing across her face. "He found us," she whispered. Danny turned, checking the window. Nothing but rain and shadows. But he felt it, that cold presence pressing against the air. They weren't alone. Somewhere out there, Victor's eyes were already watching. Danny's voice hardened, every trace of emotion replaced by ice. "We move now. Pack whatever you can." Mia clutched the boy, tears streaking her face. "He needs a doctor." "No hospitals," Danny snapped. "He'll track us through the system. We'll find another way." He tore off his coat, wrapping it around the trembling child. The boy's breathing was shallow, his small hand clutching Danny's shirt. Danny's heart ached, a pain so fierce it nearly broke him. This was his son, his blood, poisoned by the brother he once swore to protect. Mia looked at him, voice shaking. "What are you going to do?" Danny's eyes burned with determination as he met her gaze. "I'm going to end this," he said, voice low, steady. "No more running, no more hiding. If Victor wants my bloodline—" He paused, pulling her close, his breath trembling against her ear. "Then he's going to have to bleed first." Outside, thunder rumbled, not just in the sky but in his soul. The boy's skin began to glow faintly under the dart wound, veins pulsing with the same blue light. Mia screamed as Danny's eyes widened. The poison wasn't killing him, it was activating something, and it bore the unmistakable mark of Victor Morrison. The boy's body shook violently, his small frame racked with spasms as blue veins pulsed beneath his skin. Mia screamed, her voice breaking through the thunder. Danny's heart pounded like a drum in his chest as he grabbed the dart, yanking it free with one swift motion. The metallic taste of fear filled the air. The dart glowed faintly in his palm, a sickening blue light pulsing like it was alive. "Victor's behind this," he snarled, eyes burning with rage. "He wants something in his blood. He's not trying to kill him. He's testing him." The boy gasped, his breathing shallow, his pulse erratic. Mia pressed her trembling hand over the wound, tears streaming down her face. "He's just a child, Danny. What does Victor want with him?" Danny's jaw tightened, his voice low and lethal. "He wants what's in me, and now in him. He's always wanted to be more than a man. He wants power, legacy, control." Rain battered the motel window, wind howling like a warning. Danny grabbed the car keys from the table. "We can't stay here. He's already too close." He wrapped the boy in his coat, scooping him into his arms. The child's skin burned hot against his chest. "There's one place left he can't find us," he muttered. "The safe house." Mia's eyes widened. "You mean that one?" He nodded, voice hard. "The one we built, before everything fell apart." She hesitated, her face pale, but she didn't argue. She followed him into the storm. The drive was silent except for the roar of rain and the hum of the engine. The city lights faded behind them, replaced by endless stretches of forest and darkness. Danny's hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. Every flash of lightning revealed Mia's worried face, her gaze fixed on the boy sleeping weakly in her lap. She whispered his name under her breath, as if her voice alone could keep him alive. Danny risked a glance at her, the woman he once vowed to protect, the woman he'd lost to betrayal and now found again in chaos. Her wet hair clung to her face, her eyes haunted yet fierce. He felt something stir in his chest, a feeling he'd buried deep for years. But now, it burned again. They arrived at the safe house just before dawn. Hidden deep within the woods, the stone mansion stood like a ghost of another life. The same place where they'd once planned a future together, back when Danny still believed love could save him. He parked the car and stepped out, scanning the tree line, his instincts sharp. The air was heavy with the scent of pine and rain, too quiet, too still. He unlocked the heavy steel door and ushered them inside. The lights flickered to life, casting a soft amber glow across the grand room. The place hadn't changed. The same fireplace, the same old piano, even the same wine glass still sitting where she'd left it 6 years ago. Time had stopped here, waiting for them to return. Mia carried the boy to the couch, gently laying him down. His small hand still clutched Danny's coat. She brushed a kiss across his forehead. "He has your eyes," she whispered softly. Danny crouched beside her, watching the boy's chest rise and fall. His voice softened. "And your soul." His fingers brushed a tear from her cheek, lingering longer than they should have. Their faces were inches apart, hearts caught in the storm between them. Mia's breath trembled. "Danny," she began, but he silenced her with a look, that old familiar look that always said more than words ever could. The air between them thickened, electric. He reached out, his hand cupping her jaw gently. She closed her eyes, torn between fear and longing. And then, their lips met. The kiss was hesitant at first, fragile, uncertain. But then years of pain and passion crashed through the dam. It deepened, desperate, hungry, the kind of kiss that carried every memory they'd tried to bury. The thunder outside echoed their hearts, the rain pounding against the windows like the world itself was bearing witness to their reunion. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, Danny rested his forehead against hers. "You never stopped haunting me," he whispered. She smiled faintly through her tears. "And you never stopped saving me." For a moment, it felt as though time had forgiven them. The storm had quieted. The boy slept peacefully. The world, for once, seemed still. But peace, for Danny Morrison, never lasted. A slow, deliberate clap echoed through the room. Once, twice. Danny's body went rigid. The sound came from the shadows beyond the firelight. He stood slowly, instinct taking over. "Mia," he said quietly, "get behind me." A figure stepped into the dim glow, and the air froze. Victor Morrison. He looked almost exactly as Danny remembered. Tall, composed, his eyes the same cold steel gray that used to mirror Danny's own. But there was something different now, something unholy. A faint scar traced the side of his neck, and his presence carried the chill of death itself. "Beautiful reunion," Victor said, his voice smooth. Almost amused. Touching, really. "I see my nephew takes after his father." He raised his gun slowly, the barrel gleaming under the flickering light. Mia gasped, instinctively clutching the boy. Danny stepped forward, rage coursing through his veins. "You should have stayed dead." Victor smiled faintly, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, little brother," he said softly, "death doesn't want me. Not until I've finished what you started." Danny's jaw tightened. "You poisoned my son." Victor tilted his head. No, I perfected him. His tone was cold, clinical, as if he were discussing an experiment instead of a child. Do you even know what runs through your veins, Danny? What our father left us? You always thought this was about power, about family, but it's about evolution. Stop talking, Danny growled. His hand slid toward his gun holster, but Victor's finger twitched, a subtle warning. Don't, Victor said quietly. Not unless you want the boy to stop breathing. Mia's breath caught. Danny froze. What did you do to him? Victor smirked. I gave him what you were too afraid to embrace, the bloodline's gift. He's the key to everything, Danny, and when I take him, the world will remember the name Morrison for what it truly means. Danny's eyes darkened. Over my dead body. Victor's gaze sharpened, almost pitying. That can be arranged. Before Danny could react, Victor's gun fired, a single deafening shot. The sound tore through the room like thunder. Mia cried out, stumbling backward. For a moment, Danny didn't move. The world seemed to slow, the echo of the gunshot ringing in his ears. Then he saw it. The red blooming across Mia's shoulder, staining her shirt. She fell against the couch, gasping, her hand pressing against the wound. Danny's scream ripped through the silence, raw, animal, filled with agony and rage. He caught her before she hit the floor, pulling her into his arms as Victor's cold smile faded into the dark. Mia, stay with me, Danny whispered, his voice breaking. Her eyelids fluttered, her hand trembling against his cheek. Don't, she breathed weakly. Let him take our son. Danny looked up, fury and heartbreak twisting his face as Victor disappeared into the shadows, his voice echoing through the hall. You can't stop blood, brother. You can only spill it. Mia's blood dripped onto the floor, mingling with the rain leaking through the roof. The boy stirred in his sleep, his blue veins glowing brighter, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Something ancient and dangerous had awakened. The thunder outside hadn't stopped. It rolled through the forest like a beast, shaking the windows of the safe house as Danny pressed his trembling hand against Mia's wound. Her blood was warm against his skin, his pulse hammering as he whispered through clenched teeth, Stay with me, Mia. You're not leaving me again. Not now, not like this. She looked up at him, her face pale, eyes glossy with pain, but even now, she managed a faint, broken smile. You still care? Her voice was weak, barely a breath. Danny's chest tightened, his throat burning. I never stopped, he said softly. His lips brushed her forehead, lingering there as if the warmth of that touch could keep her alive. He could still feel her heartbeat, faint but fighting. The storm outside mirrored the chaos in his soul. He tore the hem of his shirt, wrapping it tightly around her shoulder to stop the bleeding, his hands shaking with a rare helplessness he hadn't felt in years. The man the world feared, the Mafia king who ruled with cold precision, now knelt in fear, not for his empire but for her. He carried her to the couch near the fire, gently laying her down. The light flickered across her face, painting her in gold and crimson. Every second stretched like an eternity. The fire crackled, the storm howled, and somewhere in between his heart broke in silence. Hours passed. The night crawled. Mia's breathing grew steadier, but her skin was pale as moonlight. Danny sat beside her, gun in one hand, her hand in the other. His eyes never left her face, terrified that if he blinked, she'd vanish again. When she finally drifted into uneasy sleep, he exhaled, a sound that trembled more than he'd ever admit. That's when he saw it, a folded note in her other hand. It was crumpled, smeared with blood, but one look at the handwriting made his stomach twist. Victor. Danny unfolded it slowly, his fingers tense, his eyes narrowing as he read, The serum runs through your bloodline. The child is the cure. For a long, breathless moment, Danny didn't move. The firelight flickered against his face, revealing the storm brewing behind his eyes. Memories he had buried long ago began to claw their way back. His father's lab, the experiments, the injections, the screams behind closed doors. The Morrison bloodline wasn't just wealthy, it was engineered. His father had called it Project Genesis, a serum designed to evolve human potential, stronger reflexes, faster healing, heightened senses. But it came with a curse, madness, death. His brother, Victor, had always been obsessed with it. Danny had walked away from that world, built his empire with his own hands, buried the family's sins deep beneath money and power. But now it had all come back to his son. The child is the cure, Danny whispered, the words cutting like a blade. That meant the serum inside the boy was pure, unstable, and Victor wanted it, wanted him to finish what their father started. Danny clenched the note, the paper crumpling beneath his fingers. "Over my dead body," he muttered. He stood, moving toward the window, staring out at the rain-soaked darkness. The forest stretched endlessly, but somewhere out there, he could feel Victor watching. He'd always been watching. Danny's phone buzzed suddenly, breaking the silence. The sound made him flinch, a rare sign of fear from a man who never flinched. He glanced at Mia, still breathing, and stepped away, answering the call with a low, lethal tone. "If this is you, Victor." But it wasn't a voice that answered. It was a video message. He tapped the screen. The image loaded slowly, blurred through static. But then his heart stopped. His son, bound to a chair in a dark room, breathing but weak. His small chest rose and fell unevenly, wires attached to his arm, faint blue light pulsing from them. And then Victor's voice came through, smooth, deliberate, chilling. "Trade your life for his, little brother. Midnight, the cathedral." The screen went black. Danny's reflection stared back at him. Cold eyes, clenched jaw, and a storm of fury beneath the surface. His knuckles tightened until his skin split. "You son of a—" He stopped himself, his breath shuddering. Panic clawed at his chest, something he hadn't felt since he was a boy. He turned toward the hallway. The boy's room was dark. He kicked the door open, his gun raised, his pulse hammering. "Adam," he called, his voice raw, but the bed was empty. The sheets were still warm. The window, open. The curtains fluttered wildly, the rain blowing in. For a moment, the world tilted. He ran to the window, staring out into the woods, but there was nothing. No movement, no sound, just darkness swallowing everything. "No," he breathed. His mind raced. He tore through the house, every room, every hallway empty. Mia stirred from the couch, her voice weak. "Danny, what's wrong?" He froze, torn between telling her and keeping her from more pain. But the truth had already shattered everything between them. "He's gone," Danny said, his voice low, trembling. "They took him." Mia's eyes widened, tears instantly pooling. She tried to sit up, but pain seared through her shoulder. No, Danny, please." He was already moving, grabbing his gun, strapping on his holster, slipping extra magazines into his coat. Every movement was mechanical, fueled by fury. "I'll get him back," he said, more to himself than her. "I'll end this tonight." "Danny, wait," she pleaded, gripping his arm. "It's a trap. That's what he wants." He turned to her, eyes burning. "I don't care." She stared at him, broken and terrified. "Then he wins," she whispered. "You die and he gets your son." He paused, her words cutting through his rage. But then his phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a video, it was a message. Simple, cold. "Trade your life for his, midnight, the cathedral." He stared at it, the rain still hammering the glass. Midnight, the cathedral. The same abandoned cathedral where he and Victor once swore brotherhood before the world turned them into enemies. A place of vows, now turned into a battleground. He looked back at Mia, her face pale, her hand gripping her wound. "You need to rest," he said softly. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "You can't go alone." He didn't answer. He just brushed her hair back gently, his thumb tracing her cheek one last time. "I have to." She caught his wrist. "Danny, promise me. If it comes down to it, save our son, not yourself." He froze, his throat tightening. "Don't ask me that," he said, voice breaking. She smiled faintly, tears glistening. "That's what fathers do." He turned away before she could see the tear that finally escaped his eye. The fire crackled behind him as he walked toward the door. Lightning split the sky, illuminating his silhouette. Tall, unbroken, walking straight into hell. Outside, the storm raged, swallowing him whole. In the distance, the cathedral's spire loomed against the horizon like a grave marker waiting for his name. The meeting was set. A father's life for his son. Rain hammered against the cathedral roof as Danny stepped through the arched doorway, his shadow stretching across the broken marble floor. The storm outside roared like a living beast, but inside it was deathly still, the kind of silence that came before destruction. Each step echoed, heavy with purpose and fear. His breath came slow, measured, but beneath the surface his heart pounded like a war drum. At the altar, bathed in flickering candlelight, stood Victor, older, thinner, but with the same cold fire in his eyes, and beside him, the boy, Danny's son, weak, barely standing. Danny froze, his throat tightening. The child looked up, eyes glassy with fever. A faint tremor running through his small frame. Victor's smile slithered across his face. "You came alone," he said softly, "just like I knew you would." Danny's jaw clenched. "You said you'd let him go." "I said we'd trade," Victor replied, spreading his arms. "Your life for his. Fair, isn't it?" Danny's hand hovered near his gun, but something in Victor's eyes, that wild glint of genius and madness, made him pause. Victor gestured toward the boy. "He carries what our father spent a lifetime perfecting, the serum, the bloodline. You, brother, were the prototype, but him, he's the masterpiece." Danny's voice was low, trembling with rage. "You're sick." Victor chuckled, a dry, haunting sound. "No, I'm enlightened. I'm carrying forward Father's dream." The thunder cracked overhead, the candles flickering violently. Danny stepped closer. "Then take me. Let him live his life, away from this nightmare." Victor tilted his head, eyes narrowing. "You'd die for him, just like you almost did for her." Danny's heart clenched. "I still would." For a moment Victor's smile faltered. A ghost of brotherhood flickered behind the hatred, but it vanished as quickly as it came. From the shadows, men began to move, armed, silent, surrounding Danny like wolves. He didn't flinch. But before Victor could speak again, a gunshot shattered the silence. One of Victor's men fell, then another. A voice echoed from the doorway, sharp, furious, familiar. "Not tonight." Mia stood there, drenched from the rain, her arm still bandaged, her eyes burning with vengeance. She looked like an avenging angel standing in hell. She fired again, the blast lighting up the cathedral walls. Danny dove for cover as chaos erupted, bullets flying, glass shattering, echoes of death bouncing off the stone pillars. Victor snarled, dragging the boy behind the altar. "You never could stay dead, could you, Mia?" She ducked behind a pew, reloading with trembling hands. "You should have finished the job when you had the chance." Danny crawled toward her, blood dripping from a cut on his forehead. "You shouldn't have come." She glanced at him, voice breaking. "You really thought I'd let you die alone?" For a heartbeat. Their eyes met, fire and forgiveness colliding. Then Victor's laughter broke through the gunfire. "Touching! Truly touching! But you're both too late." He raised a syringe, glowing faint blue under the candlelight. Danny's eyes widened, the same serum that poisoned his son. Victor lunged. Danny met him halfway, the two brothers colliding with the fury of beasts. The syringe flashed between them, their fists and blood mixing in violent rhythm. Victor's face twisted with madness. "You were always the favorite," he roared. Danny gritted his teeth, pushing him back. "Because I earned it." But in that split second of rage, Victor's hand slipped, and the needle plunged deep into Danny's chest. The pain was instant. Fire spread through his veins, white-hot, merciless. Danny staggered back, choking, his vision blurring. The world tilted sideways. "Danny!" Mia screamed, rushing forward, shooting one of Victor's men who tried to block her path. Victor laughed, breath ragged. "Now you'll see, brother, what perfection feels like." Danny fell to his knees, gripping his chest, his body trembling violently. The serum burned like acid, like liquid lightning under his skin. Mia slid beside him, tears streaking down her face. No, stay with me. Danny, look at me." He met her eyes, and despite the agony, a faint smile touched his lips. "If this is goodbye," he whispered hoarsely, "make it worth it." She shook her head desperately. "Don't you dare say that." He reached up, fingers brushing her cheek, and pulled her close. Their lips met, deep, raw, and trembling. A kiss filled with every word they never said, every promise broken, every memory that still burned. For a second, everything else disappeared. The blood, the pain, the storm. It was just them. Then the sound of footsteps broke through. She pulled back, eyes wide. The boy was gone. Victor was gone. Her voice cracked. "Danny." He took him. Danny's pupils dilated, fury overtaking the pain. He tried to stand, but his legs buckled beneath him. Mia caught him, her body shaking as she held him close. "Don't move, please. We'll find him. We'll get him back." Danny coughed, blood on his lips. "He's gonna finish what Father started." Lightning split the sky, casting their faces in ghostly light. Mia gripped his hand tightly, her voice trembling. "Then we'll finish him first." He looked at her, half conscious, his breath shallow. "You and me, always the storm." She nodded, tears falling. "Always." Outside, the thunder roared like an omen. The cathedral trembled as wind howled through broken windows, scattering the candles that still flickered in defiance. Somewhere in the distance, an engine started. Tires screeched. Victor was gone, and so was their son. Mia's eyes hardened through her tears. "He thinks he won." Danny's faint smile returned. "He doesn't know what happens when you take from me." She brushed her fingers over his bloodied face. "Then let's make him find out." But before they could move, Danny's body convulsed, the serum spreading faster now, glowing faintly beneath his skin. Mia gasped. "Danny, your veins, they're burning." He clenched his jaw, forcing the words through the pain. "If this thing doesn't kill me, it'll make me something worse." A distant explosion rumbled, Victor's parting gift. Flames began to rise from the back of the cathedral. Mia screamed his name, dragging him toward the doors as the fire spread. He stumbled beside her, half conscious, every muscle in his body screaming. Each step felt like dragging himself through hell, but he refused to stop. As they burst through the cathedral doors, rain poured over them like absolution, hissing as it met the flames behind. Danny collapsed against the stone steps, coughing, barely breathing. Mia knelt beside him, clutching his hand. "Stay with me, please." He looked up at her, eyes glassy but defiant. "He took our son." She nodded fiercely. "Then we take him back." The camera of fate lingered on their faces, broken, soaked in rain and blood, yet burning with the same fierce fire that had once started everything. And as thunder cracked across the black sky, Mia whispered, "This isn't over." Danny's faint voice followed, trembling but alive. "It never is." Far away in a dark facility lit by cold, fluorescent light, Victor stood beside the boy's hospital bed. Tubes ran into the child's arm, glowing faint blue. Victor smiled faintly, whispering, "Welcome home, my heir." Rain still fell over the smoldering ruins of the cathedral as the night faded into a gray dawn. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, but Mia didn't hear them, only the sound of her own heartbeat and the fading echo of Danny's voice. When she woke, everything was white. A hospital room, machines humming. Her shoulder was bandaged, her veins cold with IV fluids. For a moment, she thought it had been a nightmare, until her fingers brushed something cold and metallic on her chest. Danny's ring. Her breath caught as tears filled her eyes. A nurse stepped quietly into the room, eyes full of sympathy. "You're lucky to be alive," she said softly, placing a folded note in Mia's hand. "The man who brought you here said this was for you." Mia's hands trembled as she opened it. Danny's handwriting. Rough, hurried, familiar. "He's alive. Don't follow. Protect our son." She stared at the words, her heart twisting painfully. Protect their son. But how could she when he was gone, when Victor had taken him into the shadows? "I can't just stay here," she whispered. She tore the IV from her arm, ignoring the nurse's protests, and stumbled out into the rain once more. Danny had saved her, but she couldn't let him fight this alone. She wouldn't. Not again. Somewhere across the continent, Danny Morrison had become a ghost, a name whispered in the underworld, a force that moved like a storm. He tore through Victor's network one by one, leaving only ashes behind. Every informant, every lab, every hidden ally of Victor's empire fell under his wrath. Europe trembled at the sound of his return. Paris, Berlin, Rome. Each night he left destruction in his wake, chasing fragments of clues that all led back to one name: Victor Morrison, the man who stole his son. But it wasn't revenge that fueled him anymore. It was guilt. Every night when he closed his eyes, he saw Mia's face, pale in the firelight, her lips trembling against his. He heard her voice, whispering always, and every morning he woke with her name in his mouth like a prayer. He couldn't stop, not until this ended, not until his son was free. After weeks of blood and fire, he finally found the trail he'd been waiting for. A message intercepted, a flight manifest, a private airfield near Prague, one that Victor had used before, during their father's darker days. Danny loaded his gun, his hand steady, his veins still glowing faintly with the serum's cruel gift. Whatever it had done to him, it had made him stronger, faster, almost unstoppable. But it also burned him from the inside, a reminder that every heartbeat might be his last. The night was thick with thunder when he arrived at the airfield. Wind howled through the open hangars, rain slashing across the tarmac. He could see it through the sheets of rain, Victor's private jet, engines humming, preparing for takeoff. Danny moved like a shadow, silent, deadly, slipping between cargo crates as lightning flashed overhead. Through the window, he saw him, Victor standing beside a medical rig, and on the table, his son, pale, hooked to tubes that glowed the same faint blue as the serum. Danny's blood froze. "No," he whispered, voice breaking. He burst through the jet's door, gun drawn, rage surging like a storm. "Stop!" The shout echoed off the metal walls, raw and desperate. Victor turned slowly, syringe in hand, his eyes gleaming with that same unholy light. "You're too late," he rasped, voice cracking under madness and exhaustion. "You can't kill me, brother. You'd destroy him, too." Danny's breath came in ragged gasps, every instinct screaming to pull the trigger. "Then I'll destroy myself first." Victor laughed, the sound hollow and broken. "You've always been predictable." He lunged, slashing the syringe through the air. Danny dodged, the needle grazing his arm. Pain flared like lightning. They collided, brothers locked in a brutal dance of fury and blood. Each punch was a memory, each strike a confession. The walls shook as their struggle tore through the jet's cabin. Glass shattering, sparks flying from the ripped cables overhead. "You took everything from me!" Danny roared. "You were Father's favorite!" Victor spat back, eyes wild. "You never understood. I didn't want his love. I wanted his power." Their fists collided again, the sound echoing through the roaring engines. The boy stirred weakly, eyes half open, calling faintly, "Dad." Danny froze for a heartbeat, that single word piercing his soul like a blade. Victor seized the opening, slamming him against the wall. The syringe hovered inches from Danny's neck. "It ends with you," Victor hissed. Danny's hand shot up, grabbing Victor's wrist. "No," he growled through clenched teeth. "It ends with us." He twisted hard, forcing the syringe downward. It plunged into Victor's chest. Victor's scream tore through the jet as blue light burst beneath his skin. "You fool!" he gasped, collapsing to his knees. "You've doomed us both!" Danny staggered backward, panting, blood dripping from his mouth. "No," he whispered. "I've saved him." But Victor wasn't done. Laughing through his pain, he slammed his hand against the console. Warning alarms blared instantly, red lights flashing, engines overloading. "If I can't have him," Victor rasped, his voice fading, "no one will." Danny's eyes widened. The jet engines roared beyond control. Flames began to erupt from the wing. He ran to his son, ripping the tubes from his small arms, ignoring the sparks raining from the ceiling. The boy whimpered weakly, his tiny hands clutching Danny's jacket. "Hold on, buddy," Danny said, voice trembling. "I've got you! I've got you!" The explosion came like thunder from hell. The jet split open, metal shrieking, fire swallowing the night sky. Danny dove through the wreckage with the boy in his arms as the shock wave hurled debris in every direction. The world became fire and glass and noise, and then silence. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then, through the burning wreckage, a single figure stumbled out, torn, bloodied, barely breathing, but alive. Danny Morrison, the boy limp but alive in his arms, his coat burned, his face streaked with soot and rain, his steps uneven. But he kept walking, each one fueled by the same fire that refused to die. Behind him, the wreck of the jet burned like judgment against the storm. He looked down at his son, unconscious but breathing, and whispered, "You're safe now." Then, collapsing to his knees, he stared up at the storming sky, the fire reflecting in his eyes. "It's over," he murmured. But the wind howled in answer, like a warning that it never truly was. From the burning wreckage, one figure stumbled out, carrying the boy. Smoke still haunted the horizon long after the wreckage had cooled, the fire's echo crawling across the sky like the memory of a nightmare that refused to fade. The world believed it was over. Victor Morrison, the fallen genius of the criminal world, was gone, consumed by his own madness, and with him, they said, died the last Morrison, Danny, the man whose name had ruled the underworld and whose soul had been reborn in the fire of love. But the truth had a habit of hiding beneath ashes. Weeks later, on a quiet Italian coast, the sea stretched endless and blue, whispering secrets only the lost could understand. Waves rolled gently against the sand, kissing the shore as if trying to soothe old wounds. Mia sat there, barefoot, her hair loose and wild, her eyes carrying both peace and pain. In her palm, she still held Danny's ring, the one she found in the hospital that night. It had become her heartbeat, her prayer, her curse. Beside her, their son, pale but healing, knelt in the sand, tracing little hearts with a stick, his laughter quiet, almost fragile. Each sound was a reminder that love, even broken, could still make something beautiful. The townspeople called her the widow of the storm. They didn't ask questions. They saw the sadness in her eyes and left her to her silence. Every evening she'd come to the same spot by the sea, watching the sunset bleed into the horizon, listening to the ocean as if it might whisper a miracle. But every night, the waves only brought memories. His voice, his touch, his promise. I'll find a way back. That evening, as the sun melted into gold and crimson, a breeze swept through the shore, stirring the sand around her feet. The boy looked up, pointing. "Mama, someone's coming." She turned slightly, expecting a fisherman or a stranger passing by. But the moment her eyes caught the figure emerging from the light, her breath vanished. He stood there, scarred, weary, and alive. The setting sun caught his silhouette, painting him in amber fire. Danny Morrison. The man the world had buried, the man she had mourned. He was thinner now, his face marked by pain, but his eyes, those fierce blue eyes, still burned with that same impossible strength. He took a slow step forward, the gravel crunching beneath his boots. His voice was hoarse, soft, carrying through the wind. "You always hated endings." Mia froze, her lips parting in disbelief. The ring slipped from her fingers, landing softly in the sand. For a heartbeat, she didn't move. Then her tears fell, silent, disbelieving, before she ran. The world blurred as she crossed the distance between them. When she reached him, she didn't speak. She just collided into his chest, her arms, wrapping around him like she would never let go again. Danny held her tightly, his breath shaking. For a long time, they didn't move. Two ghosts finding life again. He buried his face in her hair, inhaling the scent that had haunted him through every sleepless night. "You came back," she whispered, her voice trembling. He nodded slowly, pressing his forehead to hers. "Victor took the shot meant for me." His last words were, "Protect what I never could." His voice cracked. "He saved me, Mia. After everything. He saved me." Mia's tears turned to sobs against his chest, her fingers clutching the back of his shirt. "You promised you wouldn't die on me again," she said through the tears. He smiled faintly, voice rough. "I tried, but death doesn't seem to want me." Their son stood a few steps away, clutching the small stick he'd been using to draw. His eyes, the same shade of blue as his father's, widened in awe. "Mommy, is that—" Mia turned, smiling through tears. "Yes, baby, that's your dad." Danny knelt slowly, the motion stiff, his ribs still aching beneath the bandages. He reached out a trembling hand. "Hey, champ." The boy hesitated, then ran into his arms, burying his face in Danny's shoulder. Danny closed his eyes, holding him tight, every muscle trembling from the weight of the moment. "You've got her heart, kid," he murmured softly, "stronger than any bloodline." The three of them stayed there, mother, father, and son, framed against the dying light. The waves whispered around them, carrying away the ghosts of the past. Danny looked out to the horizon, the sea wind brushing his face. Victor's gone. The serum's destroyed. It's finally over. Mia leaned against him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Is it?" she asked quietly. He smiled, eyes soft. "As over as it ever gets for people like us." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining like the first night they met. She looked up at him, studying every scar, every new line. "You could have stayed hidden," she whispered. "Why come back?" He turned to her, eyes burning with something fierce and tender. "Because I spent my life running from love, Mia. From you, from what I could have been. I thought power made me strong, but it only made me hollow. You made me alive." The wind picked up, tossing her hair across his face. She smiled softly, touching his cheek. "You're still terrible at goodbyes." Danny leaned closer, his voice a whisper only she could hear. "Then let's stop saying them." He kissed her, slow, deep, and trembling with the weight of everything they had lost and found again. The world seemed to stop. The sea hushed. Even time held its breath. When they finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "We've both been dying for years, Mia," he murmured, his voice breaking. "Let's finally live." She smiled through tears, her fingers tracing the scar on his jaw. Together this time. Always. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the sea turned molten gold. Their son laughed, chasing the tide, his small footprints marking the sand between them. Danny and Mia watched him run, the light catching his hair like a halo. Danny exhaled softly, the ghost of a smile on his lips. He's free. That's all that ever mattered. Mia slipped her hand into his, leaning against his side. "You're free too." He looked at her, eyes filled with peace for the first time in years. "No, Mia, we are." The waves crashed gently, the sound like a heartbeat beneath the sky. Behind them, far in the distance, a seagull soared, white against the fading orange. The world moved on, but for them, time stood still. Danny turned to her once more, his voice low, a soft confession carried by the wind. "In the end," he said, "the most dangerous men aren't the ones who kill for power." He paused, his gaze drifting to their son, then back to her. "They're the ones who die for love." Mia smiled, tears glistening in her eyes as the final light faded, and for the first time in years, they didn't run. They just stood there, together, alive, unbroken, as the tide erased every trace of the past, leaving behind nothing but footprints and the promise of tomorrow. Final scene. The camera of fate pulls back, showing the coastline bathed in twilight, the small family framed against eternity. The sea hums their story in whispers, carrying it to the horizon, where love outlasts everything, even death itself. If this story moved your heart, don't just scroll away. Hit subscribe to Heartwoven Tales, where every heartbeat hides a story, every story bleeds emotion, because sometimes the most dangerous men aren't the ones who kill for power, they're the ones who die for love. Stay with us. Your next tale begins soon.